Alright guys, Bill here back with more Yakuza. It's been about 15 minutes or so since I last recorded. We're continuing on. Also still watching my my own fucking Valhalla story arc ranking. So that's the thing. Yeah, we're continuing on. We're reaching the end. I mean, we're on chapter 4 of the finale.
And I did like how on the replay I decided to make him the leader of the region just to see what would happen.
There's only one more chapter after this, so I think we could actually finish this tonight if I really wanted to. This will probably be the last episode for today, though. It's already 2:15, so don't want to record all day. But yeah, we could probably finish this tonight, which would be cool. Then we'll start Yakuza 6 probably sometime tomorrow, probably tomorrow night or so.
I feel like the most satisfying way to play this arc is if you end up having Hunwald as the leader by the end. While the
I'm talking about the Lincolnshire arc.
Are just kind of underwhelming.
Again, this is my Assassin's Creed Valhalla ranking the story arcs video.
Fine arc. Again, a mostly unimportant one. Definitely not a bad one. It does land here.
Which I don't get why this one has as many dislikes as it does. 67 likes, 5 dislikes.
Again, Oswald is a pretty similar character to Hunwald.
I feel like I did a pretty good job of this video.
But more so as the type of arc that they go over through the course of the arc.
No,
Oswald starts this arc already the leader of this region. However, he's the one that's not respected. He's someone that is trying to gain the respect of his future wife's family, and you do help him with that. And I will be honest, I did find a lot of this arc kind of boring. I think there's a lot of missions within this arc that I just found like, why are we doing this? And because I initially had this lower on the list, however, the more I thought about it, the more I feel like Oswald as a character and his arc was more satisfying to me than Hunwald, especially because like his arc is guaranteed. Like his arc is always going to happen, while Hunwald only happens in the scenario that you do end up picking him. In these other scenarios, his arc isn't as satisfying. Oswald's arc always happens in the way that he does, and I think it's always a satisfying arc. I mean, you have that moment where he's actually willing to like sacrifice himself to take down Ruin, and I think that's a pretty satisfying moment for him. And then we also have the wedding at the end, which I think is a nice cap off to this mission. Again, a lot of ridiculous stuff happened there, but it's a nice like peaceful moment with the arc as well. Again, for me, East Anglia and Lincolnshire, they're really interchangeable. There's not really much there differentiating the two. The main reason I did put this one above Lincolnshire, though, is because of Oswald's arc guaranteed to have happened, while, again, Hunwald's isn't. And while I do actually think Hunwald's arc is probably better, Oswald's is still pretty satisfying in its own right. So for me, it lands here at number 15. Now number 14, we have, again, another arc within the same tier. We have Grantsbridgeshire.
I regret putting this one though, as high as it is.
This is one of the last arcs on here that I would consider pointless to a degree. I mean, like, this one's not completely pointless, obviously, because it does introduce someone who does become a more important character later down the road. She's a recurring character whenever we gather our allies, and I think Selma overall is a fine character, but she's not the reason why I enjoyed this arc. And for me, this arc really is a pretty standard arc when it comes to Valhalla. I mean, I think this is the base level, where I think the structure is pretty solid. Again, it's pretty similar to Nottinghamshire, where we meet.
Yeah, considering I didn't use a script or anything with this video, I actually think this video turned out pretty fucking well.
Within our ranks, and then we do a mission with each of the suspects, and then we come back together to do an investigation, and eventually decide which one is the traitor, and depending on whether we pick the right one or not, possibly get a battle at the end with the traitor. And also, along the way, we're also taking down an Order of the Ancients member. So again, all that is pretty positive. I really like the structure there. I really like the mystery of, oh, who's the traitor here? I did like the connection to the Order of the Ancients. I think the downside for this arc is, again, mostly it is pointless. Outside of the introduction of Selma, nothing here really has much importance to the overall narrative. Plus also, I think part of it's boring. I think part of the mission structure here just feels like your typical, clear out an area or burn this village down, and it's just very generic stuff. But again, there's enough importance within this arc to where I think it's a base level arc. I think it's pretty much what I would expect the average arc to be.
Yeah, Dante's had almost nothing to do since like Yakuza 3, right?
Average the entire way through. So for me, it lands number 14. Now number 13. This is actually the first.
Actually, I guess actually no, he didn't do anything in Yakuza 3. He did something else before.
That does actually progress the Eivor and Sigurd's relationship. And at 13 here, we do have Glenchester, also known as the Kingmaker Saga. I just find this arc so forgettable, and it's really strange that it is, because it does introduce characters that do become important later, like Ivar and Uba and Jailbird, and it is one of the first arcs, so like you would expect it to be somewhat memorable, but for me, I just find so much of this arc really forgettable. A lot of this arc is just faded from my mind, both the first time I played it and even on the replay here. I remember when playing it, like I was like, it's solid, like it's a solid arc, but I think as time has gone on, it's just an arc that really just fades from your mind. It's not super memorable in really any fashion. I do think the highlight of this arc, though, for me, is really the relationship between Eivor and Sigurd, where we get a lot of insight into Sigurd's state of mind. Actually, something I missed the initial time I played the game is Sigurd talks about Harold and kind of explains why he doesn't have the desire to take over Norway anymore. And I do think these are nice character moments for Sigurd. But outside of that, again, the arc is mostly forgettable. Despite this being an arc that does contribute to the main story, I don't feel like it's one that is as important as the other ones that do contribute to the main story. So for me, it does end up landing here at number 13. Now number 12, and at number 12 here, we do have the last arc that I would consider completely pointless. But it's just a satisfying story arc overall, and that is Skyropshire, Book of Dragons. And this is an arc that is very dependent on your opinions on Ivar. Again, this is an arc pretty much solely about Ivar, where you deal with King Rodri, who is Jacob Fry from AC Syndicate, which is just kind of weird, but you have to deal with his relationship with Ivar, which is a very, very rocky relationship, which eventually leads to Ivar killing Childbirth, and again, that's a really depressing storyline there, but and then we just see like Ivar's complete like descent into madness. I mean, even though he's already an insane character to begin with, but obviously with that being the last straw, like we get this boss battle with him, which is really great. And really, I just felt like Ivar really makes this arc. Again, it really is a determining factor on whether or not you're gonna like this arc, because he's such a major factor in like everything that has anything to do with this arc. I do have problems with the structure of this arc, though. I do think there are a few missions in the middle of it that just feel kind of pointless, where you're just doing tedious work just to make the game longer. But outside of that, I felt like Ivar's inclusion within this arc definitely made this arc a lot better. I do feel like his arc here is a really interesting one, and almost solely because of that, this ends up landing here at number 12. Now number 11.
今回の事件、すべては近江連合の現会長黒沢という男が計画したものです。それはもうご存知ですか？
That's what I get for putting ads on my video.
As I said, from this point forward, these are all important arcs. I think these are all very good arcs from this point forward. It's just a matter of how they're ranked. And here, number 11 is one that I think I probably have lower ranked than I thought I was going to. And that is actually the final arc within the main storyline, and that is Hamptonshire, also known as the Prophecies of the King. And I don't know what to say about this arc. Again, like, it's weird because like, this is an epilogue, essentially, to the main story. And it does finally show Eivor's development over the course of the narrative, which he spends a lot of the game trying to become the leader of the Raven Clan, and now that she's actually the leader, we see her act as a leader. I do think that part of this arc is the most interesting part, and really it's the only reason it is this high, because to us I find a lot of the rest of the arc kind of boring. I think from a gameplay perspective, this arc is really not interesting at all. Again, it feels like a lot of tedious quests that you're doing. You have the boss battle with Goodwin, which is pretty strong, but again, for me, it's like overall the gameplay of this arc isn't the strong suit of the arc. We do have some character depths during this arc, which do add some weight to it, but also I do feel like it was kind of an anticlimactic end for like Asoma, who, despite being in the narrative a good chunk, wasn't really given much to action. Also, I feel like the game's just way too heavy-handed in its execution of Eivor's character development, where we keep on being told of like Eivor, oh my god, Eivor, you changed, I'm a leader now. It's like, how? It's like Guthrum says that like literally right after meeting her again in this arc, when it's like you just met her again for like 5 minutes. Like, why are you already like so obsessed at how much she's changed? Especially because like the last time we saw him was in the Sussex arc, where it's like she had reasons to be frantic about the way that she was leading, because like she was trying to save Sigurd's life at that point. Like he had been tortured and all this stuff. It's like it makes sense why she would be rash in her decision making at that point. So for Guthrum to just be so in love with how much she's changed over time just felt really ridiculous to me. Also, I just feel like the ending of this arc feels very anticlimactic. I don't feel like this feels like the end of the story. And I'm to be fair, it isn't. But in terms of the actual story of the overall narrative, I would say this is kind of an underwhelming conclusion to all the arcs that have come before it. So for me, this ends up landing here at number 11. Now number 10, we're back to one of these special arcs within the game. haven't talked about one of these since Asgard, but here we got Vinland.
I have Vinland way too low, by the way.
So yeah, I mean, like, Vinland is a tough one to assess for me, because I think the thing about Vinland is obviously you have the connection to AC3, which that is fantastic. The appearance of the Grand Temple, the appearance of the crystal ball, having Eivor be the one to hand the crystal ball to the Indians that ends up in Connor's hands and ends up being the reason why he becomes an assassin, the reason why Juno was able to manipulate him into hiding the Grand Temple key, which leads to Desmond and AC3. Again, fantastic stuff there. Great connection. However, I talked about this in my spoiler review. I do wish we got more involved with the Grand Temple. I think, like, obviously we walk up to the Grand Temple and she just says, like, oh, it's not for me. It's like, I wish we got more there. Though I will say, I did really like on the replay how I noticed this connection between this and the Jotunheim arc, where the message that Eivor sees when she gets the Grand Temple is actually the message that Juno put into the crystal ball at the end of the Jotunheim arc. So that's a cool connection there. However, the arc is very, very short, and I think that's really the thing that I do not start for, is that really this arc can be finished in like 30 minutes. And one that's also kind of annoying in the sense that you don't have your horse, you don't have your longship, so because you actually have to run the entire way to Gorm, which is a pretty long run, so it's like that's also kind of an annoying bit there. So gameplay-wise, it's not my favorite, but I do think what it does narratively is cool. Again, the connection to AC3 is...
I didn't talk about her final speech.
I personally would have liked him to do more, but it's like, at the end of the day, for what he did, it's a very strong arc.
That's a completely missed opportunity. I didn't talk about her final speech.
Still lands at number 10. Number 9, we're back to an arc that does progress
This is Kent?
however, I don't think it does it enough, and that is Kent, also known as the Instruments of the Ancients.
This is what 8 is Jotunheim.
The main highlight of this arc is Bassam. I think the highlight of this arc is
I know one's like Center for Shire.
doing missions with Bassam, connecting with Bassam. That's all really great. I mean, the campfire scene between
2 is Jorvik.
Bassam, where Bassam talks about losing his child and all that. Fantastic scene. One of the best scenes in the entire game. However, the mission structure that surrounds this
the order.
is pretty poor. I feel like the missions that take place within...
Oh, we got like Center for Shire, Sussex,
very monotonous, very boring, gets
Jotunheim. I'm trying to think of all of them. Jotunheim. We have the 3 city arcs.
I do have the issue of, like, again, this doesn't really do much. Like, outside of
There's 2 more. Oh, and this prologue and the prologue in the end.
Story is around finding Folke and through that finding Sigurd. But we end the arc not even finding them. Like, we literally end the arc with essentially, like, your princess in our castle sort of mode, where it's like, oh wait, they're in Sussex now. Oh well, but then we find, like, Sigurd's arm and everything, which does raise the stakes of everything, but again, it's still a kind of underwhelming ending. Like, at least give us, like, some sort of, like, battle with Folke before she retreats or something. Like, the fact that we just show up and she's already gone. Again, kind of underwhelming there. But again, the relationship stuff with Bassam is fantastic. That one scene in particular, again, that one campfire scene for me is really the most memorable thing from this arc for me. And ends up landing here at number 9. Now number 8 is an arc, again, I have very similar opinions of as next arc within the main storyline, and that is Sussex, also the siege of Portchester, and again, this progresses the story. I mean, it is very integral to the
Fuck, this is going on for a while.
Relationship where Eivor is finally able to save Sigurd. You end up taking down Folke in a pretty interesting boss battle, the one that can be kind of annoying too, but whatever. You know, obviously we get the narrative progression of Eivor and Sigurd's relationship, where it really deteriorates during this arc, where this is like where he goes completely insane. We do still have all of our allies from previous arcs showing up here, where we get all our allies together to help with the siege of Portchester, and that's really cool to see these recurring characters. However, again, this is another one that, like, the mission structure for me feels very lazy. Again, another one that's just like, we're just doing random things just to do them. I will say that something I did like about this arc is kind of the callback to Brotherhood, where there is a point where, again, we get split up into 3 quests, each one having to do with one of our allies, in Bassam, Upa, and Soma. And what I liked about this was that each one of these quests essentially were to help break down a certain aspect of Folke's infrastructure, kind of similar to in AC Brotherhood, where you have 3 arcs in the endgame there that are all centered around taking out Cesare's resources. This is a similar thing here with Folke. The problem is, again, I think those quests themselves just feel kind of pointless. And really, for me, that's what ends up being the highlight of this arc, is the appearance of all these former characters. Because, to be honest, outside of that, it's really just annoying gameplay-wise. I don't find this a fun arc to play. play, but the narrative ramifications of it do end up landing here at number 8. Now number 7, we're finally at the final of the special arcs within the game. Again, I talked about this before, again, Asgard, Jotunheim, and Finland, and here we finally have Jotunheim, also known as the Saga of the Snows. And for me, I have mixed opinions.
Jotunheim's way too high.
I feel like from a gameplay perspective, it simply just not fun. It's not really
Should not be
fun
this
to
high.
play. I don't like the actual area of Jotunheim. Again, another like really snowy, rocky area, just not fun to navigate around. However, I adore what they were trying to do with this arc. And where at this point it becomes very clear that the visions that Eivor are seeing within these dreams, that these are essentially the memories of Odin and essentially showing the Isu society, but through the perspective that Eivor is able to comprehend them. Because Eivor looks at these beings as what we see within Norse mythology. And because of that, that's how she perceives them. Even though this isn't the reality of the actual circumstances, this is how she perceives Odin's memories. And I think that's a really interesting concept and really cool how they were able to rationalize the ridiculousness of these dreams. I did love they brought back the voice actors from Minerva, Juno, and Jupiter and had them as characters within this game. That's really awesome. And the obvious blatant connections to the Isu and the ramifications of this. Again, we see Minerva trying to work on her message to Ezio. That's really awesome. We see Juno helping Odin take the mead, which essentially explains how Aita ended up getting reborn over and over again as Sage. That's really cool. We obviously here get the explanation of why Eivor is seeing Odin's memories and the fact that she is a reincarnation of him. That's really cool. We get more background on Alethea and her relationship with Loki. That's really cool. Like, there's a lot of really, really cool narrative bits within this arc. The problem is that it's surrounded by a lot of gameplay elements that are just really annoying. But outside of that, again, this arc is really strong. I really love the connection that they made between this and the Isu Society, but the gameplay knocks it down for me. It lands here at number 7. Now at number 6.
Jimmy's John's is a sandwich place, and now these Weisenheimers are trying to be chipmen too? Ridiculous! Pick away, Jimmy John!
I could have skipped that one.
6, and we're finally here. We're finally getting to the first of the city arcs, and we do have the London arc, the City of War. And the London arc is really strange because, like, the London arc is an arc.
Let's see if I can remember top 5. I'm pretty sure I know the top 5. I believe next is Winchester.
I played it. I was like, it's fine.
Then it's the prologue and then final arc, and then
are fantastic. However, I feel like London does it the worst. I feel like Winchester and Jorvik do such a great job at mirroring AC1, while London just kind of like, I guess it does it. Obviously, it's supposed to mirror Acre and the assassinations that are within it, but I don't feel like it really does that good of a job at doing it. I mean, I think if we look at the assassination missions within Acre, we have the Garnier mission, which, I mean, you can kind of tell the connection there, but not much. William de Montfort mission is like not really connected at all. Like, I feel like that's probably the one that's done the worst. Then we have the final mission where we take down the compass that is very reminiscent of the Sabran mission, and that one's cool, and that's where I started to notice that, oh yeah, this is supposed to be related to Acre, but it's like, it shouldn't have taken me till the very end of the arc for that to really become apparent, and I feel like that's the biggest knock against London, is the fact that it's not as apparent as these other arcs at connecting itself to AC1. Now, even without that, I do think narratively, I actually like this arc probably more than the next arc that we'll be talking about. But that next arc has more than London does, because at the end of the day, London is a pretty isolated arc outside of giving us allies in Stove and Eric.
日本ドームでメジャーデビューコンサートを控えてるんですが、それが危険なんじゃないか。けど、確かあのコンサートは中止になった。それが違うんです。勝つが手を回して、日程が今日から明日に変更になったんです。しかもはるかちゃんだけでなく、大阪芸能所属のはるかちゃんのライバル T セットとの特別ユニットを組んで舞台に立つ。T セットっつったら、はるかの代わりにコンサートやるっつったらあのコンビか。あれで組むの。多分今も明日披露するデビュー曲のレッスンをしているところでしょう。
play more of a factor on the course of the narrative, and also could win as well. They are pretty important characters moving forward. And their inclusion here really does affect the overall narrative, where by the time of Hamptonshire, there's obviously a lot of reference to what occurred in Winchester. So I think that's something you have to at least give credit for. And also I feel like, again, it is more blatant in its connections than AC1. The assassination missions are much more blatant with the quill related to Tawalt, the gallows, with the assassination that takes place at the execution, very similar to AC1. And then you have the Sage, who's very similar to Robert de Saab, and he has this funeral, you have him as a bishop, you have, again, these connections to Robert de Saab are pretty apparent. I think this does a better job
どうにか開催日を変更することではるかちゃんの安全を確保し彼女をドームのステージに立たせようとしてたんじゃないかしかしその予定も狂ってしまった本来なら勝也は昨晩黒沢と決着をつけるつもりだったんでしょうだが黒沢を取り逃してしまったコンサートを中止しようにも当の勝也は意識不明の重体事態は悪い方向に進んでしまっています
Whatever, the prologue in Norway, that section of the game. Also known as the battle for Norway. Essentially, this is the point from where you start playing as Eivor until the point where they leave for England. And again, this is so radically different in its structure than every other arc in the game, where obviously from this point forward, the way the arcs are structured is that we go to Randvi for the alliance map, we pledge that alliance, and we go meet up with the person that is integral within the arc. This one is just a natural part of the story. Like, it's literally just the opening part of the story, and because that, it did feel weird to include it here, but the game does consider it an arc, and like at that point it's like, well, it'll just be weird if I didn't have it on there, so we're gonna put it on. Again, it's at number 4 here. Obviously it has a lot of narrative importance because it introduces the story. A lot of characters here are introduced, obviously Eivor, Sigurd, Randvi, Basim, Hytham, pretty much every major character. You get the introduction to all the gameplay mechanics. You have these really cool sections with Basim that really are the highlight for this section of the game for me, where Basim essentially teaches you to become an assassin. Like, he teaches you the assassination techniques, they teach you social stuff. Like, these sections are really great. You have the, I forget how you pronounce his name, Kochev, whatever his name is. The entire arc with him is pretty good. And you have the introduction to Order of the Ancients. Again, there's a lot of really great stuff in this opening section. I will say that the biggest flaw in this section, though, is just how scattered it is in terms of it's doing so many things at once, and it's obviously trying to juggle these things around. Again, it had a lot of introduction to characters and mechanics that had the shoehorn in there that makes it feel like it's doing so many different things at one time, which is fine as an opening of the game, but when we're on this arc ranking here, we're trying to rank these arcs on their individual value, I do feel like that kind of harms this arc a bit, but it's obviously still really strong, but it does land here at number 4. And now number 3, and again, I debated over where not to include this. As when I first started this list, I thought this was going to be number 1, I really did, but I kind of reassessed it, and that is the ending of the game, the return to Norway with Sigurd, also known as In the Hall of the Sea. This is obviously a really good arc. It's the ending of the game. I thought the ending of the game was the best part of the game. The only thing that knocks it from being number 1, though, is in a situation where I'm trying to rank these arcs based on their individual merit. And I think when you look at this arc, so much of this arc obviously depends on previous arcs. I think when you look at the actual arc itself and what it does over the course of its playtime, it's like, it's not as cohesive and not as strong as the next 2 arcs that we'll be talking about. Like, it's a really good arc in terms of a conclusion to the grand story, but in terms of telling its own individual story, it doesn't do as good of a job, and it's not meant to. Like, it's meant to be the end of the game, like, obviously. But we are ranking these arcs, like, we are ranking them as arcs. And when the other arcs are definitely more cohesive than this one, that, again, this one is a bit more banking on the Eivor and Sigurd relationship that had become strained over the course of the narrative. I do think that takes a bit away from it. However, obviously there's some great stuff within this. You have the meet-up with Sigurd's father, and that's a really great scene, and really shows just how insane
Hey, Killer's like nearing 50 here, isn't he? Kind of forgot about that, too.
It's very reminiscent of like Robert's from before Edward and Savold there, and that's a really great kind of callback there. We also get the Basim reveal, which is really cool, which again, I already suspected coming in this, but it's still really cool to get it confirmed there, and then see him get put into great, which the modern day is really great. I really like the ending of the Eivor and Sigurd relationship in the context of you getting the ending that Sigurd goes back with you. I actually think if you don't get that ending, it's actually pretty dumb. And it's actually very underwhelming, their entire arc. But if you do get the ending where Sigurd goes back to you, I think that is a very satisfying storyline there. I do think there's a couple things that harm it for me. I feel like the Valhalla section for me is just really boring. I get what they were trying to do there, but I've never been a big fan of those sort of dream sequences. And I just found this really dull. I also didn't like the Odin boss battle, where it's like, we put away our axe to be able to escape Odin's. Like, again, so weird how, like, they have this character development for Eivor, where, like, she's talking about how she doesn't, or the ancient storyline, where she's, like, at the great line, where she, like, says, like, oh, she needs everything else. But then they just throw away that character development pretty soon afterwards, where, like, by the end of the game, where we get to the Order of the Ancient storyline, where she's, like, asked, oh, do you want to become a Hidden? She's like, no, I want glory. It's like, it's really dumb. And I also found the Bastion boss battle just to be kind of ridiculous again, with him just like running around like a ridiculous pace, jumping all over the place. Like, it just feels ridiculous. So, I mean, again, there's some definitely strong moments here for me, but there were some knocks that were enough to land it here at number 3.
Hisense has big TVs. Rob Gronkowski likes big
Put another ad there?
You may now skip this ad.
We're going on the trip of a lifetime.
Now number 2, at number 2, the top 2 here, again, we're not the top 2.
So he's actually top.
I had in mind coming into this replay. But I do think over the course of the replay, both of these arcs really impressed me. Both in completely different fashions. But at number 2 here, we do have the final city arc. We do have the
But again, like, Majima's not dead, right? Like, I'm pretty sure Majima's not dead. Like, because I know he's in 6. Or...
And Jorvik is fantastic. It's like, it's really strange. Like, I initially played Jorvik, and obviously I got the AC1 connections and everything, but I didn't really think much of it. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, this is fine. And to be fair, like, at that point in the game, I was like kind of trying to get through the game as quickly as possible so I could get around to making a spoiler review. But on the replay here, it really is great. The way that each of these assassinations are executed are so perfect. The way that they each directly call back to AC1 is so masterful. Again, we get the first, I mean, to be fair, the first one's kind of dumb, where we take down the Firebrand, and it's similar to the Jupiter Air mission from AC1, where he's like burning books, and he has multiple people that look just like him. We have to kill the right one, and we don't know which one it is until after we kill them. That's all called back here, and that's really great. I do think it's dumb that they.
Well, what else is there for me to do?
Like, the Firebrand is person without any sort of disguise or anything. At least Jubier had like a sort of disguise, so it wasn't like as ridiculous that all these people look the same. We have the Firebrand where like all of her allies look literally the same color of hair and everything. It's so dumb, but again, the assassination mission is still really cool. We then get the Tamir callback version, the way like he's stabbing the guy in the middle of the plaza and all that stuff. That stuff's really great. Again, really cool callback. And then the final one where we have Ada and Poison, the entire party again.
明日のコンサートの見取り図を作ってました。だって桐生さん、はるかちゃんに諦めるなって言ったんでしょ。さっきこの図面を取りに行った時、はるかちゃんが言ってましたよ。
I said Jorvik. Oh my fucking god! How am I saying Jorvik?
そうだったらそうと早く言ってくれればよかったのに。
That's Jorvik.
そうよね。じゃあ当日の入り口についてですね、もう一度おさらいするとですね、ちょっと待ってくれ。
Now number 1, the best arc in the game for me. Again, was not expecting this coming into it. Again, I enjoyed this arc when I first played it, but I did not expect it to end up being number 1.
First time they're meeting, right? Oh, okay.
It's got to be Oxenfordshire, also known as the Paladin Stone.
紹介するの忘れて
And
ま
it's
した。
strange because, like, I do think this arc is harmed by
彼が
its missions.
大悟さんの
I
友
think
人
there are
で
some missions within this
元
arc
プロ野
that
球
feel
選手で
pointless, and it's
球
not
界
the
を
most
追
like
放され
perfectly
て、おまけに俺から3億2000万もの金を借金しようとした、名古屋の風俗ライター。
It's so much stronger
よろしくお願いします。
than
So, like, Shinra is really just like a joke character at this point, right?
that encompasses most of the conflict within the major storyline.
See, I'm looking this up right now. It looks like we still have about hour and a half left of the game.
もしこの図面通りステージがホームベース上に位置するんであれば誰にも見つからずに狙撃できるポイントはさらに絞られます。このバックスタンドの横この部分しかありえません。でそこまで断定できる他にも狙撃できるとこありそうなもんやからな。それ以外の場所だと周囲に人がいたり角度の問題で狙撃するのが難しくなってしまう。ステージの柱や照明それにカメラの配置を考えるとホームベースを狙い撃ちするにはこのポイントしか考えられないんです。
まるで経験があるような言いっぷりだな。
いくら元野球選手って言ったって狙撃されたこともしたこともないんでしょ。本当にその場所に敵が来るって断定しちゃっていいのかな。本当ですって。ここしかないんですって。人間に狙撃とまではいかないですが実際プロの世界じゃホームチームがこのポイントにスパイを用意するのは常識だったりしますから。なんだそれ。いわゆるサインとってやつです。このポイントから相手キャッチャーのサインを直接望遠鏡などで盗んでそれをベンチに無線で送ったりしてます。じゃあプロのバッターってのは相手の配球を知った上で打ったりしてるってわけ？全部が全部ってわけじゃないですけど試合を決定づけるような局面でサインを盗むってのは結構ありますね。ちょっと待った。それじゃ君が15年前サイン盗したって疑いをかけられた事件ってのも本当にサインを盗んでいたってこと？その逆なんです。本来ならサヨナラがかかったあの場面ワイバーンズが勝ちに行くんであればバックスタンドのこの場所にスパイを配置してサインを盗みその配球を三塁コーチャーが俺に教えてくるはずでした。だがあの時バックスタンドには誰もいなかった。じゃあ君はサインを知らなかったってこと？だからあの時俺はホームランを打てたんです。サインを事前に知らされていたらきっとあのストレートを打つことはできなかったでしょうから。なるほど。皮肉なもんだね。サインを知らなかったからこそ打てたホームランなのに君はサイン盗の嫌疑をかけられ9回追放されちまった。
Come on, rewatch this video at some point too. My history of Assassin's Creed novelization video. I'll see how that holds up, considering that was one of my first videos.
できなかった。なんで？お客さんの夢を奪いたくなかったんです。誰も夢のフィールドでそんなことが行われているなんて知らない。いや、知りたくもない。彼らは俺たちのプレーを見て喜び、興奮し、自分の果たせなかった夢を重ね合わせる。俺が打ったたった1本のホームラン、それを見て元気を取り戻してくれたってファンの人もいてくれたんです。夢か。このコンサートも同じです。会場に来るお客さんたちははるかちゃんの歌い踊る姿に夢を見る。人間ってのは自分の目で夢を見ないとダメなんです。夢を見なきゃ自分の夢を想像することなんてできない。そうやって夢ってのは形を変えて人から人に伝わっていくもんなんだと思います。俺が沢田に夢を見たように堂島君が俺に夢を感じてくれたように今度は堂島君が命がけで守ろうとした夢を俺が引き継
Christianity at some points, despite it never being mentioned in the games. The AC2 DLCs are also detailed here before they even came out. A major change, though, within this book is the end date. The game ends in 1499, however, the book here ends in 1503, which was the year of Rodrigo Borgia's death. While this is not proven, this is my theory on why this is. My theory is that the original plan
The response to this video is actually very positive.
Death of Rodrigo Borgia. However, late into the production of AC2, they decided to make Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which would be a direct sequel. Now, due to their plans with Brotherhood, I think they changed the year that the game ends very late into production, which forced them to make Ezio spare Rodrigo due to historical accuracy. Now, obviously, this book was also being written during the game's development, and was probably already completed by the time of Brotherhood's conception, which I think lends credence to my theory. Now, something else I should mention is that none of these game novelizations include the modern day. So all references to Desmond are eliminated, and the book ends with Minerva talking to Ezio instead of Desmond, which I do think takes away from the scene. Overall, this book is probably the one that has the least amount of changes from its original source material, and the biggest change, as I mentioned, being something that they decided to do probably at the last second. But I would still recommend
So we're going to
Renaissance
end
for
at
fans
the
of
first
Ezio,
opportunity
fans
that
of
we get.
Assassin's Creed 2, but considering the minimal amount of original content within it, it's tough to recommend for everybody. Alright, now let's move on to 2010, where Ezio's story continued with the release of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. And this is another pretty straightforward
Final chapter.
novelization. However, I do feel like this book has some filler in it, which makes this book longer than AC Renaissance, despite the AC Brotherhood game being much shorter than AC2. The biggest addition to this book, and the main reason I think you would want to read it, is because it fills in the time period between Cesare's arrest and Cesare's death, detailing Cesare's escape and Ezio searching them.
Actually, I can
Some
just
of
end
the details that are
here.
in the book that are missing
We're gonna
from
do
the
that.
games are Maria Auditore's
Next episode,
death,
continue
which
on.
occurs
I don't know if I want to do
after
another one
Cesare's
tonight,
arrest, Ezio
today or
becoming a
not.
counselor for Pope
I kind of want to,
Julius
but I kind of
II,
don't.
who is Rodrigo's replacement. The details of
We'll
Claudia
see.
stepping
But for now,
down as
thank you for watching.
Madame of Rosa Infiore.